Computer. Hello. It's Nancy Friedman, and I have a name for my program now. It's called Noon with Nancy. So most of my recordings will be done at room temperature at noon, with no editing. So this is what you see is what you get, which is part of Noon with Nancy. And yes, I have a special guest, and I would love to say how many of you have ever seen or met this beautiful. You are a good-looking stud.
Thank you.
You have.
Likewise.
Oh, I'm a good-looking stud. Good. Okay.
Good-looking woman.
Okay, thank you. We have Marty McDermott, professor, author, podcaster. The list goes on. I am going to play Larry King, Marty.
Okay.
Which I, envied him as a broadcaster.
Yes, likewise.
But I saw so many of his interviews, and he always told the person, I didn't go into your background. I want you to tell me, because some people are so scripted when they go back.
Yes.
What I know about you is the 5 or 6 interviews that you've done with me and your podcast, which at the moment franchise interviews.
Yes, that's right.
Think of the name. Yours are always obviously very interesting. However, we've never seen your face.
Yes, I think that's why I went into podcasting.
Oh, no, you have a face for radio. Okay. So I know a little bit, enough to be dangerous about you. I have a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
And you can feel free to let everybody know. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, his podcasts are maybe not as blunt as this, but he goes deep into your background and finds out things that you forgot about yourself.
Yeah.
I'm just the opposite. So, we've been friends for years, but yes, I appreciate it.
Well, it's interesting, Nancy, right? Because I remember you mentioned the whole Larry King thing, and I found that interesting that he didn't really know a lot about his guest, and I kind of followed 2 interviewers that I think were spectacular. And I hate to mention his name sometimes because he had a little bit of controversy, but Charlie Rose, I thought was a fantastic interviewer.
You're right on both.
Yeah. And also, and I only did this one time in about 800 interviews. James Lipton. I asked you.
Wait, you're way ahead of me. I got that down.
Okay.
Okay. It's one of my questions. Okay. But we both adored him. Okay, so without telling us the year, we always like to know when first question you meet on the date. What sign are you? So we want the month and the day you were born.
March 8th, which makes me a Pisces.
I don't know too much about Pisces.
I don't know either. I about them either. I was never big on the whole sign thing, because I think sometimes you stereotype people. And it's funny, Nancy, because I've met other Pisces, and sometimes they're totally opposite of my personality. You know what I mean? So I don't know how much truth there is behind the whole, sign. Yeah, but it's still fun nevertheless, isn't it?
It's always a conversation starter.
It is. I totally agree with that.
That's a good one for you who are still dating, out in the dating field. Yeah, you probably know. God knows what they're talking about now. All right.
Right. That's true.
And I know you're on the East Coast, but where were you born, Marty?
Okay, so I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and my sister was born in Brooklyn, New York, and then my parents decided to move. They wanted to get out of the city, so we were raised in New Jersey, actually, in several different places in New Jersey, mostly Sayreville, New Jersey. I don't know if you're familiar with Sayreville, New Jersey.
Familiar.
It was a very blue collar industrial town. There was a lot of factories there and things like that, and it was a great place to grow up. But Brooklyn kind of became my second home because usually every weekend or every other weekend we'd go back to Brooklyn and visit my cousins and my grandparents and things like that. And I haven't been back to Brooklyn since COVID, Nancy. So I miss that place a lot.
A lot of people haven't been anywhere since COVID.
Yeah, exactly. So raised in New Jersey, and then eventually my wife and I, we moved out to Easton, Pennsylvania. So that's where I am now, and I love it here. It's such a beautiful place. I don't know if you've ever been to Easton before.
I've been to Philadelphia, so
Okay.
if you're if one of the suburbs of Philadelphia, it would be, I have a friend who lives in Ardmore, am I saying that?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
And
We're we're not far from Philly. We're about, well, about 55 miles from Philadelphia. So we're north of Philadelphia. We're
right,
right on the Delaware River. So if I took a kayak all the way down, I would hit Philadelphia. And and we're about, I mean, Pennsylvania is such a big state. We're about 300 miles from Pittsburgh, and we're about maybe 70 miles from New York.
and
So that's,
probably poorly maligned, like St. Louis, Missouri is poorly maligned sometimes. Uh, and people don't like them, probably have never been here. Or
yeah,
here's what I don't find funny.
yeah.
Hi, have you ever been to St. Louis? Yeah, I was at the airport once. I mean, how could you? That's what people tell me. Oh, you were at the airport. Good, because if you go to the airport in New Jersey, it's not
Yeah.
a pretty sight.
It's not Newark, right? Newark, New Jersey.
Right. But if you go into, and Dick and I have going into
Yes.
the trees and the beauty of New Jersey,
Yeah,
it's beautiful. So Easton must be just as nice.
it is. It's beautiful here.
By the way, we're talking about traveling and traveling to Brooklyn. Where is the furthest you've traveled in your life and your tours?
Wow. That's a great question. So the furthest I've traveled, Nancy, was Athens, Greece.
Ooh.
I wrote a paper in, oh God, I can't even remember what year it was, Nancy. I think it was like 2010, and I submitted it to a conference, and they invited me out to speak about the paper. Of course, the paper was on franchising, by the way.
But we're going to get
And
into the franchise part of your
yeah,
life.
we will. We'll get into that. So, so the organization I was working for at the time, they sent me out to Athens, Greece, and I was terrified, quite frankly, because I went out there by myself. I couldn't speak the language, and I found Greece very difficult to get around, quite frankly. I found a lot of people didn't speak English
Don't they have
particularly
the
well.
boats to take you around wherever you want to go?
They do, but I was in a part where it was more of a collegiate atmosphere. I was presenting at a university, and so that's the furthest away I've
You
I've been
beat
from
me. Yeah.
home. Yeah, and it was the closest I've ever been to. My mom is actually from Tunis, Tunisia, so
Huh?
that's the closest I've ever been to Tunis, Tunisia. I didn't make it there, but I keep saying someday I'll visit.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah,
Now you mentioned it's like you saw my notes and you didn't.
I didn't.
I know,
I
I
think we
know.
just know each other so well.
I don't give notice on my questions.
I know.
Because if you have something to ask me or I have something to ask you, I want it to be off the cuff and from
Yeah.
the heart.
Yes.
So for those who don't know, and most of you know Marty from his podcast interviews, but he's got a spectacular background and career. What I am not 100% sure of is how you got into franchising. Tell us about that.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a great story. Um, okay, so like a lot of the things in my life, I think it kind of happened by accident, or maybe it was divine intervention. You could say either one for that. But I was working in Manhattan, Nancy. I was working for a company called Venture Direct Worldwide, and I was selling online advertising. Now, this is back in 1999 when online advertising was something new and big, like
Very
selling
new.
banners and things like that. People didn't even know what it was.
Didn't want it
And
even. Yeah.
exactly. So, and I was responsible for a website. It was called the Be Your Own Boss Forum. So I figured it was kind of like a business opportunity website, like all different types of business opportunities. And I figured that a good client for this website would be franchisors. So there was a franchise show. In the old days, they used to call it the Jacob Javits Center.
Right, right. What is it
Now,
now?
I think they call this refer to it as the Javits Center. So I
Ah,
think if you say Jacob Javits,
it
people
shows
think
your
you're
age.
old.
Ah,
Right. You show your age. So I still call it Jacob Javits. But I went to my first franchise show, and I was shocked and surprised because I was expecting to see KFC and McDonald's, and all the big names, all the food franchises. But when I got there, I was like surprised that there was all these different types of franchises there. There was printing franchises, shoe repair franchises. I mean, you name it, they had it.
right.
And this whole concept really fascinated me. So I got this directory. It was called the Bonds directory. It listed all the franchisors, and I called every one of them, and I started to get advertisers on the website.
Smart.
Yeah, but something very interesting happened to me because we were looking to drive traffic to this website, the Be Your Own Boss forum. And I found this website on the internet. It kept coming up. It was called franchiseamerica.com. And so they kept coming up number one in Google, but they had no advertisers. So I called the owner of the company and I said, you know what? I think we should talk. I think I can help you. We were talking for like 2 or 3 weeks, and we kind of came to an agreement that I would own part of the company, if I left Venture Direct. And so I did. I left the company. And so I became a business owner or an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And my parents were very upset with me. They said, "Are you crazy?" They said, "Well, what about medical benefits? What about 401k?" None of that, but I just believed in the concept. And so Franchise America was one of the very first franchise websites on the internet. And over the course of time, then there was more and more and more. There became like 50 or 60 of them over time. So we ended up selling the company to a competitor. And so I was out of the franchise business, and I missed it so much that what happened was, so I started taking classes at Fairleigh Dickinson University. I was going for what was called a post MBA degree. And after I finished that, I started writing a newsletter on the topic of franchising. It's just a regular newsletter, like you have your newsletter, which I actually subscribe to.
And you read
And
sometimes, yes.
and I read them. I do read them. You could tell. But something interesting happened after about a year of writing the newsletter. Was I got a phone call from one of my subscribers, and he said, "Marty," he goes, "I subscribed to your newsletter, and I think this would make a great podcast." And in 2005, I didn't even know what a podcast was at
Uh,
the time. And I kind of declined on the offer. I said, "It's flattering." I said, "Thanks, but no thanks." And my wife, Connie, she said to me, she says, "Well, why don't you try it and see if you like it?" And I tried it, and I've been hooked ever
Addictive.
since.
It's
Yeah,
addictive.
it's addictive. It's been so much fun. I mean, it's it's provided so many opportunities for me, Nancy. I would never know someone like yourself if it wasn't for the podcast. It's just changed my life without sounding over dramatic, but in so many ways. I've interviewed some amazing people that I still can't believe I've interviewed over the years. And I love it. I'm still hooked on it. I get just as much joy today doing an interview, Nancy, as I did from my first
I
interview.
believe it. And kudos to you. Our friend Jack Munson
Yeah.
listed you as one of the top franchise podcasts. So congratulations.
Thank you. That was very flattering of him, because I'm a fan of his, by the way, too.
Who is
I find
it?
that,
Who is it?
yeah,
I
how could
gotta
you not like the guy?
yeah, I gotta get back to him. I gotta get on bended knees and ready to kiss the ring. I did something he didn't care for, and I thought
Yes.
he was gonna ban me, but he didn't.
Okay. He
But
didn't.
I did something. I found
Oh,
it funny,
there's a
which
story
goes
here. I want to hear it.
oh, it goes to show you that two people don't always have the same sense of humor.
Sure.
Uh,
Right. Right.
I,
Right.
I, I will ask Jack if I have the permission to tell that
To
story.
tell this story,
And
because I would love to hear it
it
offline or
is,
online.
I found it funny. He
Yeah,
did not, and
he did not.
I don't want to lose him as a friend, obviously. But anyway, your story there, and you're a professor at
At Purdue University
Duke,
in their global division. Yeah. And so I've been with Purdue University Global now. God, it's going on almost 5 years. And it's been wonderful
and
working with
you're working
Purdue.
with the kids.
Well, so it's interesting. That's a great question, because our students are a little bit different. They're a little bit older than the typical college student, like 18, 19, 20 years old. Our average student at Purdue University Global, Nancy, there are more women than men. I think we have 60% females, 40% males, and the average age, I think, is 34 at our school.
I could go there. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. And we have students of
On
all
this side, I
ages.
could go there. On that side, I could.
It's wonderful because and it's kind of interesting, Nancy, because I think about the last 20 years of my life, is doing the podcast. I've been teaching online now for 20 years. What you see here in my back, I mean, I never have to leave home if I don't want to. I mean, uh,
What do you teach? If somebody wanted to
good
enroll,
question.
what does Marty teach?
So I teach marketing, marketing management, digital marketing, social media marketing, really anything pertaining to marketing is
That's your
I love
specialty.
yeah, I love the topic of marketing. Um, I actually have a doctorate degree in marketing. I started my
Yeah.
bachelor's in marketing, and then I
You have
finished my
so many
doctorate.
letters after your name. It's
Yeah, I
hard
can't
to see what your real name is.
exactly. So Yeah, so and I just love teaching the topic, and we use Zoom for our classes now too, actually.
Good.
I just started using Zoom, and I like it. I'm getting used to it.
You, it is very addictive. I got sidelined, as I think I told you. If I didn't, I'll go over it very quickly. Sidelined from my on-site programs
Yeah.
because of my health underlying issues, and they don't want me to
Yes.
travel and be with people.
Yes.
So I'm stuck
Yeah.
with Big Friedman, which is not so terrible. But if
Right.
we were dressed,
Right.
I would make him come say hello to you. But anyway, the Zoom programs have flourished, and you should be very good on it. You appear very well on it. You're
Thank you.
obviously you look, you have Jack, which what was Jack. The hell's his name? That terrible.
Jack Mazen?
No, the actor Jack
Oh, Jack Nicholson.
Nicholson heritage. All right, I'm gonna take us off franchising for a moment because one
Okay.
thing we really clicked on, and you already mentioned it, was Actor Studio with friend.
Yes.
I say friend because you talk about wanting to be someone's friend, was James Lipton, and he died
Yes.
just a couple of years ago,
Yes, he did.
prior to COVID.
Yeah.
I love that because there was no script.
Yes. Yes. What an amazing man he was. I mean, how he just interviewed people because he was so passionate, wasn't he? I
He
mean,
was
he was
passionate and
so,
he knew what he was talking about, which
yeah,
brings me to the fact that when we see actors today on late night and they're asked a simple question, they give a yes or no.
right.
They don't have a script. Actors need scripts.
Yes, they
Nick
do.
always says these poor souls can't hold a normal conversation with a
Right.
guest host other than saying
Right.
yes or no. And you know who I was surprised at that? I don't know if you saw the HBO special on Paul Newman and his wife, Joanne Woodward. If you
I
did,
didn't see it. I would like to see it.
yeah, it's awesome. But
Is it really?
oh my gosh, I mean, I fell in love with him all over again.
Yeah.
However, he was not a great guest to have.
Yes.
He was a
Right.
yes and no and very calm. And
Yeah.
all his hosts are, passionate people and tell me about this. Oh, it was
Right.
good. It was good. It was very good. I mean,
Yeah.
and he was a very private man, I guess.
Right. He was private. It's funny because I never saw James Lipton interview Paul Newman. I think he did. It's
I
probably
I'm
maybe
gonna
it's in
look
the
it up.
older. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up too. But I remember when James Lipton interviewed Robert De Niro, I was surprised at Robert De Niro how shy he was during the interview, you know. Um,
Do you think
eh,
it's shy or do you think it's a DNA thing that I can read a script and I can act and I can win an award? I don't know how to hold a conversation.
Maybe that's what it is too. That's a real interesting
I
question.
I don't know. I've never met him. I worked with some good stars, blah blah blah. Uh,
Right.
and I love. We could talk about James Lipton, because I know a long time, but I do suggest that if you can find him on YouTube, and I believe you can,
Yes, you can.
anybody that you would like to see interviewed. I mean, he did them. He did them all. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
He was, like Marty says, just so interested and passionate, and I don't even think he
Yeah.
knows. He probably did scripted.
Yeah, so I stole some of his style, I think, into the podcast. I would never compare myself or put him in that level, but I always try to, no matter who I'm interviewing, Nancy, is I try to get as excited as possible about that person.
Oh,
I mean, again, I cheat a little because I do a little background information first, you know what I mean? Because
and I like to be surprised, but there's a
exactly.
value
So,
to
and it
both.
doesn't matter. It works both ways, quite frankly, I think. I've seen it done both ways. I think for me, it's more comfortable to do it that way. But I like this format though that we're
You're
doing
not, but
here.
you're not ADD, so I understand. My husband's not ADD. He would do exactly what you did. Um, I know what you're passionate about most, and that's your
Mhm.
beautiful family. So just
Yes,
let our
thank
viewers
you.
know just a little bit of what you can, Connie, and my
Yeah,
here, and it's just so fun to hear people get excited about their family instead of saying, "I got 2 kids and a wife, and we live in a group."
right, right. No, thanks for asking because you're right. It shows how well you know me, Nancy, because it's funny because if people ever ask me about things like, what are your hobbies and things like that, my hobby is spending as much time with Connie and Martin as possible, is any free time I have that, Martin's been off this summer. He's going back to school in a couple weeks, you
And
know,
how
but
old is he now? He's,
so he's 14 now. He's going to be
wow.
15 in
I think I
October.
met you when he was 7 or 8.
I think so, yeah. I mean,
I,
he
it,
was
it,
he was just a little boy, you know, and I think I told you the story. I named him after my dad, who was also Martin. So he's
right.
Martin, and my grandfather was Martin. My great grandfather was Martin, and
Oh,
as far
it's
as
so
I
many
know,
Martins. Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah.
So the story goes, I think he's like the seventh Martin Joseph McDermott that's out there. So he has a lot of pressure now to have a son, if he has children, you know, to continue the name,
Well, you
you
can
know,
go
if
with
he wants to.
Martinetta.
Sure, exactly. That's another option too. So, but I told him it's his decision if he wants to carry on the tradition or not. I won't hold him to it. You know, that's totally up to him.
Well,
Um,
we've got about 5 more minutes left.
okay.
I want to ask you a couple more questions and
Yeah.
anything that you might want to add that I forgot to ask.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to guess, and I could be wrong,
Okay.
that you're more of a book reader than a TV watcher.
Wow, you're good.
Well, and I didn't
Yes.
do I haven't been a little angel on your back. So, best book you recently read, fiction or nonfiction?
Well, there's a book I'm reading right now that I'm just into, and it's called Abundance. And I forget the author's name. I just got it on Audible recently, but it talks about there's so much negativity in the world today, Nancy, you know, and I know you're a very positive person, like particularly, you know, at Telephone Doctor, you have a very positive environment there.
Thank
And
you.
it just talks about it kind of looks at like the future as, you know, the glass is half full as opposed to half empty. Because like you hear a lot of the reports, you know, like they say, okay, the economy is not so good and things aren't going to be so great. There's not going to be much growth. But this gentleman, what attracted me to the book was that, you know, he talks about all the opportunities that are going to take place, you know, that we're going to be able to solve hunger one day. One day we're going to be able to have maybe cars that run on water or something like that. You know what I mean? Or just things like that. It's like a very optimistic book, you know. So that's one that I'm kind of into right now.
Interesting.
Um, yeah. So and I like that stuff too. You know, as I like to read books on mostly business. You know,
Sure.
it's any reading that I do.
Have
I don't
you
want to
read?
say it's boring reading, but
No, it's
it's
not boring. My husband is I just introduced him to one thing on TV, but he is just a constant reader. He's a lifelong learner, blah, blah,
he
blah.
is okay.
And he introduced me, he showed he's big on sales books, as I'm sure you are too. If
Yes,
you haven't
yes.
seen or read, the author is Chris Voss, VOS.
Okay,
It's called Never Split the Difference.
okay.
And he was a former FBI hostage negotiator.
Oh, really?
And the book, I don't have it in front of me, everything's underlined and starred because it's
Right.
applicable to life.
Yes.
Very well written. If you're interested in that sort of thing, and to our audience too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you
It's
ever written a
funny.
book, Marty?
Well, okay. So I guess I could almost maybe officially announce on your show today is that yes, I just recently started writing a book.
Wow,
Um,
wonderful.
and it was funny because you and I don't know if you would remember, we had a conversation about this. I would say maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and you said to me, "Just do it." You know, that was your advice to me. You said, "Just do it." You know,
Just
because
do
you've
it.
written all these books, you know, and I've always said, "How did you do that?" You know, to me, it's just such an accomplishment to write a book. I've been published in journal articles and things like that,
It's the
and that's
same thing,
great.
but it's more concise. That's all. So
I
you
think
have been
so.
doing
Yeah.
it. Take all
So I
your
have,
journals and here's an idea, take all your journals,
yeah,
put them into a book.
into a book.
You know,
They own the copyright on them, unfortunately,
you'll
so
figure
I
out a
can't
way.
do it. But right. But so I am in the process of writing it, and I find it very, it's fun. It motivates me, but I think it's very challenging at the same time.
Well, when
Uh,
you're done, it will be not the most, but a very rewarding, I did it.
I think so
Do
too.
it.
I think so
Quick
too.
question here. We
Yes.
have not met. You're sitting down. How
Hmm.
tall are you?
Not as tall as you think. I'm 5'10" and a half
That's
exactly. So sometimes I'll say 5'11.
that's
Sometimes I'll
interesting. I
say
don't need your
5'10.
weight because then you have the
Okay,
opportunity.
I won't tell you that.
Okay. Um, you are so much fun, and this is almost, believe it or not, a half hour, which I try to keep
Yeah.
to 15 minutes, but look at you. Um, my last question is really, is there one question that you wish I had asked that, shoot, I wish she had asked me this because, I got something to say about it. And is either yes or no is good at this point.
I can't think of anything, Nancy. It was nice that you told me that, there weren't going to be any scripted questions or anything like that. You know what I mean? I think that's why I was so excited for this interview. You know what I mean? Is that because if I had those questions, I think I would have over prepped. It's that person in me, you know what I mean, that says, okay,
What
when
am I
Nancy
gonna
asks me
say? What
this,
am I gonna say?
what
What
am
am
I
I
going to
gonna
say?
say?
Right, right.
Exactly.
And I love, I just learned something from you by doing this. You know what I mean? Is that an interview can go in so many different directions, can it? And it could be
Well,
fun.
you're
It's
like
just,
me, you're inquisitive. And if you're a podcaster or an interviewer that is inquisitive, and I am naturally inquisitive, I mean, when people say they did something, I go, why'd you do that? And nobody's ever questioned
right,
them for that, or how did you do that?
right.
Anyway, you are a good friend. Did you dress up just
Likewise.
for me, or is this you all
I
the
dressed
time?
up just for you, actually.
Oh,
Yes, I
that's
did. I
great.
said,
I
you
did
know what? I
too,
said,
but
this is so important. Because I've always wanted you to have a podcast and I want it to be so successful because I would listen to you every podcast that you did. I just find you to be, I think I mentioned this to you a while back, is I've always found, and I know because you were an actress or actor, I don't know what the term is today, but you were an actress in your
I was
day,
in theater.
in theater, right? And I've always been drawn to those people for some reason, even though I always say I don't have an ounce of talent when it comes to acting or anything like that. I've always found, people like yourself interesting. Like I'm drawn to you like a magnet, as I'm not, maybe not the same personality, but find you fascinating, and
Oh,
everything you
you're
say is
very
interesting.
kind. You're very kind. I will tell you that theater opened my eyes to so much. And
Yeah,
if I could be queen of the world, I would make every child in grade school and high school and college take
yeah,
a theater course.
yes,
Everything in theater applies to sales. Everything in
yep,
theater applies to life, from
absolutely.
listening skills to eye contact to, I mean, just so
Yeah,
much applies
right.
to it. And in fact, I wrote a article
Yeah.
on, theater should, I maybe I'll repost that because
I
it's,
might have read that article actually, Nancy. I do read your newsletters and,
well,
and your
there's a lot
blogs and
out,
things
there's a
like that.
lot
Yeah,
out.
there's so many. I couldn't have possibly
You're
read all
very
of them,
kind. I
but
try to keep mine short.
I'm a fan.
We, likewise, my friend.
Thank
You have
you.
been a joy, and tell people
Likewise,
where you can
Nancy.
be reached if they need you. You're all over the internet, as far as,
Sure.
but
Yes. So mainly if you go to franchiseinterviews.com, Nancy, we have every interview we've ever done from interview number one up until our most recent interview. So there's about 750, 800 different interviews you can listen
wow.
to up to this point. And a lot of people ask me, they say, okay, well, what's the benchmark? How far do you want to go? I've always said at least 1,000, so that means I have several more years.
I don't know if you
Uh,
could put this up there, but I'd be happy if you did. We're gonna post you, and hopefully good things will happen.
That's wonderful. This
God
has been
bless you.
so much
You're a good
fun.
friend, and I like you very, very much.
Likewise, Nancy. It's
Stay
always a
well.
pleasure.
Stay
Thank you, my
well.
friend. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.